Hi, it's Harry Redknapp here. You're listening to a proper podcast. It's the Alan Hudson podcast. It's proper football, proper talk.
Well, hello again. Welcome back to the Alan Hudson podcast. Thanks very much for joining us. We got another great guest alongside us today. He was basically Mr. Chelsea for 30 years, often known as the Spy. He was the media man. He was the host on Chelsea TV, and he was the pitch announcer that was familiar to all Chelsea fans for a long, long time. But before we introduce him, Alan's going to give us a couple of words on subscriptions, aren't you, Alan?
Yes, I've noticed we haven't got a lot lately, have we, Tom?
We're getting all the more for every time that you make an announcement about it. So
is that right? Well, you subscribe by going on YouTube, and if you want to carry on watching, please subscribe. I don't get paid for doing this, by the way. This is just from my heart, and I'll do it for let Tony off the hook for 5 minutes. So let's go. Subscribe, please. Anyway, we got a good, great guest. He's a lovely fella. I can't say I miss him in Chelsea because I don't really go down there that much, but I did notice a big change when he weren't there. A couple of times I've been, in the Osgood Suite, but then everything's changed, you know. It's and as we know, it's not always for the better. It's I suppose, Neil, in many times, in many ways, I don't know if it was like it before, but you was very close to the players, weren't you?
Yeah. I want to go back though before I start to my first game. Right. As a supporter, and that was in 1959.
Right.
When I was 6 years old, and my dad took me, and I've been going regularly ever since. And I'm not sucking up here at all, but Alan Hudson was the best teenager I ever saw at Chelsea. Now, when I say that, why? Because when Ozzy came into the team, Ozzy was the best. I never saw Jimmy Greaves as a teenager. He was 20 when I first saw him. So I just missed that. Obviously, Ozzy was the best, but Ozzy dragged the team on his back. And when Alan came into the team, there are a lot of players in there who had been really top teenagers, not just Ozzy, John Hollins, Ron Harris, Johnny Boyle, all established themselves as teenagers. I'm talking outfield players here because if I was talking goalkeepers as well, then Peter Barnett would be up there with Alan Hudson because he came in at 18. But Alan Hudson came in to this collection of individuals that wasn't a team. And at 18 years old, he turned them into a team with his midfield play. And for that, he is the best outfield teenager I've ever seen at Chelsea. Carry on.
Well, thank you very much. Nice to be appreciated, Neil. Yeah, it was a. I don't really look at it that way because I came in. I was pretty much in awe of, like everybody was, of Charlie Cook and people like that. But I know what you're saying. As a young kid, that can either watching. I can remember the first time I see Charlie Cook. I was on dressing room duty for 6 months with a bad knee injury, and strangely enough, we've spoke about the Osgood Slaters. It should have been the Osgood Hutchinson disease, shouldn't it? You know, but I'd have then been put into Betty Ford's. But you know, and I remember all the fuss, commotion outside the dressing room, and they were a load of photographers on the field and around the centre circle, and Charlie was standing in the middle. No, I didn't know about this. I don't think we did. It just all of a sudden he was doing all these juggling and all that, you know, and they were taking photographs of him. And I didn't really. I thought, oh, he should be on the London Palladium, you know. If that's not the way to play football. And then when he started playing, you thought, wow, you know. And I was still on dressing room duty, and I thought, I've got to get down to work here, you know, because if you got to get to that level, mate, he brought it down. I thought he took Chelsea, I think, The team before Venables' team was I thought they were going to take over. George Graham and Venables, and had one or two players to that team, and they had the beating of. They went up to Liverpool in that big cup game, and they got that result. And I thought they were going to take over. And then Tommy started his antics, the Black Dwarf there and all this, and then it all went pear shaped. But they were good players. But Charlie brought the club. I think he brought football onto another level. I was telling Tony yesterday on the phone about I watched Griezmann the other night, Anton Griezmann for Atletico, and he was a level above of anyone on the field, and that's including Mbappe and the players they got.
This brings up something really interesting, as far as the current Chelsea and a lot of the current teams are concerned for me, because I think Griezmann is a great example of someone who too often in his career has been played out of position. He is not, Barcelona bought him. He was one of the 3 100+ million euro players that they bought after Neymar left, along with Dembele and Coutinho. Whatever happened to Coutinho? But Griezmann at Atletico had played off a striker. And that was his best position, in a front two, and that was his best position. And that striker might have been Diego Costa, or it might have been it was Forlan for a while. I think it was Falcao for a while as well. He played off a striker, and with France, he played more as a number 10 midfielder. And I never thought he was quite the same player in that role. And they get into the 2022 World Cup, France, and it was clear that Deschamps was struggling to find a team at the beginning that would work. And all of a sudden, the more the tournament went on, the deeper he got, Griezmann. And he finished up playing as an out-and-out midfielder, and he was fantastic. I think that was the best football of his career. Now, at Atletico Madrid, he's gone deeper now, and he plays off Alvarez. But when Barcelona signed him, they played 4-3-3 and chucked him at centre forward with Messi one side and whoever it was the other side, and it just didn't work.
I appreciate that, and that you're right. And when I said to Tony the other day, he said to me, I thought he was more of a striker. Tony, did you say?
Yeah, exactly.
I think he needs to play quite a bit deeper. Well,
the beauty of being an inside forward myself, and I think I know a little bit about playing. The number 10 I don't really understand, because the number 10 to me is an inside forward, is a Johnny Haynes, a Glenn or then you got Maradona World 10, but he was a different animal altogether. He was another level. But I watched Griezmann, and as a neutral, I didn't watch the game to see him in particular, but it was just so out. I wrote about it yesterday. It was so outstanding that this fella, nobody on the TV mentioned it. Nobody in the papers mentioned it since I've looked on all the sites, and I wrote on yesterday, I've looked on all the sites. It just shows you what you people know about football. I said, nobody has turned around and said about Anthony. All right, you might be Chelsea supporters, you might be Spurs supporters, you might be Arsenal supporters, but come on. Didn't you see this performance? It's and the reason I say that is because if my son was a 10, 11, 12-year-old playing wannabe footballer, he'd be the one. I'd say, you watch him all the time. I said to Tony the other day, I'd sit young Palmer down and say, watch him play and pick little things off him. His movement, he was popping up on the right. He was popping up on the left. He was popping up right behind the centre forward. He was popping up in the back four. And everywhere he went, he ghosted through the game. He was like a ballet dancer in a heavyweight boxing match, he was, and his touch, his technique, his ability, it was for all to see. And I was astounded at 1-1 when the nutcase on the line pulled him off. He brought him off.
But the interesting thing about Atletico is they got this cast iron way of playing, and they don't get many people forward. So it's either 4 at the back and 4 in midfield, or 3 at the back and 5 in midfield, whatever. But the thing is, they give ahead of it, they give Griezmann freedom, and he can go where he likes. Now, what Chelsea have done this season, that's how Cole Palmer was last season in many ways for Pochettino. They either played 4-3-3 and he played off the right, or they played 4-2-3-1 and he played number 10 or off the right. But what they've done this season, Chelsea, they really, I mean, every publication, I don't understand this, including the Premier League website itself, puts Chelsea down as 4-2-3-1. They haven't played 4-2-3-1 at all this season. They played 4-1-4-1. And there are 2 number 10s, not 1. So Palmer is fighting for space with Enzo Fernandez or whoever's playing the other number 10. But then on top of that, in the Enzo Maresca way, they have a fullback who goes past the Caicedo, the holding midfielder, and becomes the 3rd number 10. And increasingly, we keep hearing that Cole Palmer is being more closely marked this season. I've been to just about every game, bar 1 or 2, and those I've seen all through on television. He's been more closely marked by his own players, who are filling the spaces that he was taking last season, than he is by the opposition. You know, he says quite clearly, Enzo Maresca, and respect to him, because he's quite clear on his way, he doesn't like fullbacks to go up and down the pitch. He wants his fullbacks to go into midfield. Where's Cole Palmer go to get space then?
Well, yeah. I mean, this is exactly what you've been talking about over the last couple of minutes, is why this game is so complicated. You know, it's quite clear, as I said about Palmer. They should sit this kid down and say, look, because there's no such thing as good as he was when he first came in, and he kept Chelsea afloat. I mean, he all alone, single-handed, he got Chelsea where they got to, and everybody now expected better things from him now, but that weren't going to happen. That weren't going to happen. The kid don't look happy anyway. Griezmann looks happy. He's far more experienced, and he's done it and been there, World Cups and this, that, and the other. But for someone of his age, and Modric came on and he done his usual thing, but this fella was even on a different level to Modric, and he's getting on it. Griezmann can only be 23, something like 33.
Yeah, he is. He's up there, 33.
You know, so you know, it's just something. I brought it up because it hasn't been spoken about on Sky TV. I'm surprised. Well, I'm not surprised, because Sky TV is a joke for me. You know, it's
TNT, isn't it? On
TNT, just as bad. They're all the same people, all the same views and the same nonsense. It's, you know, when you're doing this, when you're people in the head, it's like what you said earlier on. The people running Chelsea, they're not football people, but they're not football people anywhere, are they? You know, I mean, Frank had the job twice and lost it, you know, through them not being football people. That you know, some of it is his own fault, some not his own fault. But I go back to Waddington at Stoke. No one could tell him who to buy. No one could tell Ferguson who they're buying. You know, the game has gone in that. You know, Chelsea had far too many players. Look at them the other night at Copenhagen. I was sitting in one bar and they were watching Chelsea in the other. I was watching Alkmaar play Spurs. You know, because once you see Chelsea play, you've seen them play. It's.
I have to say, the game against Copenhagen, I was keeping notes, and I wrote at the end of the first half, "This is sorry ball, Chelsea." One shot in the whole of the first half, off target. I mean, it was 4 shots in the game. Opta said 5 shots. I know the extra one. This is the other thing now about football. It's all statistically measured and the stats are all wrong. Yeah. Opta gave the 5th shot to a header by Tariq George towards the end, where he climbed for a cross, couldn't get a good contact because the cross was too high, and it bounced off his head for a goal kick. That is not a shot. It's just a header out for a goal kick. And this is what they do the whole time. It's like assists, assists for years. Chelsea, someone gave Eden Hazard the ball in the centre circle. He beat 5 players and scored a goal, and whoever gave him the ball got an assist. I mean, that's not an assist. So these statistics that everybody goes by. I mean, obviously every club has its own data and works it out from there. But I just find it all, if anyone says again the performance was good, it's just the details that were the problem. But the details are the game. The details in both penalty areas are the game. So it really is, to me, I don't get it.
Well, I mean, basically, I knew as a kid, and I knew when I went to America, that when I went to play, left Arsenal and went to Seattle, it was all statistics. Everything was stats, and we just copied that.
Yeah.
Right? And especially now you got the Americans involved, and that's what they want to see. I can understand it in American football because it's all stop-start, isn't it?
Yeah.
But this game of ours our game has become free kicks, pulling shirts, falling on the floor, and all this. And I see something on Sunday the other day, and it was Brian Close for Yorkshire against the West Indies when they battered him and he got bruises all over his body. And I thought to myself, and I said to my young friend Billy Boyce at West Indies, I went to him, you're a Fulham supporter, you will go to Fulham. They're falling on the floor when nobody's touched them. They're feigning it, they're cheating. Can you imagine if Brian Close had been sitting up in the stands there, as a young man after that West Indies battering, he'd say, what are they doing? Why are they falling on the floor? Someone tugs their shirt and they stop, they go, referee, The game is so stop-start, it's becoming boring. It's really...
Well, I think there are 2 problems here. I think one is that referees, and not just referees, but the lawmakers of the game, are making the game about themselves, and they're getting everything wrong. And the game is not as good as it used to be. Now, if you take the Paris Saint-Germain Liverpool Champions League tie, when that first PSG goal was ruled out for offside because the guy's ankle or heel was offside, that's not what the offside law was introduced for. The offside law was introduced to stop goal hanging, to stop some 7'8" centre forward standing in front of the goalkeeper and everyone lumping the ball up to him or her. That's why it was introduced.
Originally it was introduced, Neil, because it all stemmed back to Jeff Hurst, didn't it? 1966. Let's clear this up. What can we do? It took them so long to get this goal line technology in.
No, but the offside law is not about measurements. It's about, is the forward or is the attacker trying to gain an unfair advantage? And it's much more about the spirit of the game than the stewarding of some real pedantic person who shouldn't be involved with measuring lines, deciding whether or not somebody's toenail, penis or nose is offside. I mean, it's just absolutely...
I like penis.
It's nothing to do with the game. And that was a good goal. Now, I wasn't supporting PSG, even though I'm Chelsea. I was supporting Liverpool because I don't want oil state wealth set up with dubious characters running the state, never mind the football club, gaining over another team. Although I do have the problem, obviously, with American capitalists running football clubs as well. So it was a bit of a no-win for me, this game. But that was a good goal that should never have been disallowed for offside, because it should have been, because they changed the laws, and that is what offside is now. But it is a bad law. And then VAR failed to see Konate's challenge which should have been a sending off offence. And Liverpool were very, very lucky, and Paris Saint-Germain were very, very unlucky. Liverpool still deserved to win because Alisson gave just one of the best goalkeeping performances I've ever seen. But the point is, they're spoiling the game. These people, they're spoiling the game, and I think that with the intention to increase ticket prices in most grounds from the American capitalists, that the game is under threat. The game is definitely under threat because kids coming in will look at the offside law and they won't be excited. It's just spoiling it. What a great goal that was by Dembele, was it? And they're just spoiling it.
Well, I think the kids of today, the new generation, they go with the flow, don't they? They don't know any. They don't know any. They never see the other side of football. You know, they never see me score that great goal against Ipswich if he disallowed that. You know, but you know, and they say the game's moved on. The game's gone backwards since that goal again. And the same season or the season before, I see Mickey Shannon score one at the Bridge. They didn't tie the net down at the back properly, and it beat Barnett. He went in the goal, and he give a goal kick, give it the opposite way round.
I'll just explain to anyone who doesn't know what you're referring to about the Ipswich goal.
Well, the Ipswich goal was, it was quite obvious to everybody in the ground and every player on the field. It went in the side net, and hit the stanchion and come out, but it come out. I don't even know what angle. I've seen it a few times, and I smile about it because I always say, you know, that paid for my dinner that night. You know, we were on £30 a point. You know, so you know, I remember Webby saying, "Tell him it didn't go in." You know, I said, "Go away, Webby." We know, you know, because you never scored it. You know,
the ball was given, it didn't go in, and after the game, a journalist, grabbed Ozzy and said, "Did you know the ball hadn't gone in?" He said, "Yeah." He said, "Why didn't you say something to the referee?" And he said, "Dave Sexton's always told us not to argue with the referee."
Well,
it's you know, them things are refereeing mistakes. There's swings and roundabouts. I don't believe in everything levels itself out because it doesn't. That's rubbish. But I scored a couple of goals that same the season before against Manchester United, home and away, and they both got disallowed. One, Peter Houseman was, I always say, was in Manchester High Street when he was offside. He was out on the left. You know, it was unbelievable. I couldn't believe it. But we were 2-0 up, so you go down with the game. But if it had been 0-0 and we needed to win, that was it. Like say the Arsenal goal with George, you know, the last kick of the game when they beat Liverpool up there. If he'd have disallowed that, they'd have been murdered, you know, because that was to win the title, you know. Yeah. But this game against Ipswich, and I think it was sweet for me because I've always disliked Ipswich. You know, I don't think they should have been. And then they go and beat us in the cup final when I was at Arsenal. But and Bobby Robson, Fulham when I was at Fulham Sport. But and I think they shouldn't be in the league. I think because they're not in this country, are they? You know, it's a different part of the world. And the only reason the Stoke like going there because our manager and the chairman, Mr. Henshaw, loved staying after the game with the cobbolds. You know, they had the bar open all night. You know, they wouldn't let them go. We're stuck on the coach. But you know. And it's the interesting thing about you talking now is what were you doing before games? You know, telling people, you know, who's coming on and all this, and you know so much of it. I know you know a bit about the game. You love Chelsea. That's not really knowing about the game because you got to look at the bigger picture, and you know. But
well, can we just allow Neil to go back to the time it started and give us a flavour of how those 32 years at the Bridge started for you.
I was involved in a community newspaper in Earls Court, in the 1970s, and I opened a bookshop as well, and a print workshop, all sorts of things. And in the 1980s, there was a move to introduce community radio, but it wasn't community, it was much bigger. It was like kind of citywide. And the local newspapers across West London and South London, and there are 13 titles under one ownership group, tried to start this community radio station, but they didn't know, they knew journalists, and they didn't want community workers on it, and they needed a community journalist, and I was the only one they knew. So they asked me to join their board of directors, which I did, and I told them that their sports pages of their 13 newspapers were crap, which they were, and that they didn't have a proper sports editor, and that they needed some freelance journalists, someone to cover Fulham, someone to cover Queen's Park Rangers, and me to cover Chelsea. And after haranguing the chairman of the newspaper group for 2 or 3 meetings of what was clearly not going to work in the community radio states, the editor called me and asked me to be the sports editor. And I said no, I didn't have the time, I was doing other things, and reiterated someone to cover QPR, someone to cover Fulham, me to cover Chelsea. 2 weeks, 3 weeks later, he called me back. He said, I don't think you understand our budget. Either you take the sports editor role or we go somewhere else and you won't be involved. So I took the sports editor role. Out of that was in February 86. In September 86, I got a call from British Telecom saying we're starting a thing called Club Call, this premium phone lines, 0898, £3,000 a minute to listen, or something like that. And you've been recommended, would you believe, to do Queen's Park Rangers. What's your experience on radio? So I lied, as any good journalist would, and got the job. And when I agreed, I said, but actually I'm a Chelsea supporter. Any chance of getting Chelsea as well? What's happening? It's always signing then up next week. And I got the Chelsea job as well. And so in 86, I did the first pilot Club Call report from a game. And in those days, you didn't have computers running it. You had to do it on down the phone onto a reel-to-reel tape. And they said to me, do one at the beginning, saying the teams. And John Hollins was the manager of Chelsea then, your old teammate, Alan. And an hour to kick off, he phoned me and gave me the team. That was the first time I'd spoken to him within the job. And at the end of it, I said, thanks very much, but you don't want to be phoning me an hour before kickoff. That's absolutely absurd. But they were paying Chelsea enough money for Ken Bates to have said to him, that's what you got to do. So, but we stopped that pretty quickly in the next couple of weeks. But the game where I was doing it, they said, a report at the beginning, halfway through the first half, half time, the same second half, unless there's a goal, and then do a report on every goal. So people can phone in and be kept right up to date. The game was Chelsea 2, Nottingham Forest 6. So I was interrupting my own reports to start again and do the next goal and keep it up to date. It was chaos. But we got through 2 hat-tricks, by the way. I think it was Nigel Clough and I can't remember if it was Neil Webb or Gary Birtles got the other one. And so from there, I started going down Chelsea's training ground and getting interviews and what have you. And because the following season, I did Wimbledon Club Call as well. So I was doing Wimbledon, QPR and Chelsea. And that's how I got the nickname Spy. Because every time I went into the Chelsea training ground, the physio, Bob Ward, used to scream, spy in the camp, spy in the camp. And that's how I got my nickname. But in 91, I took on the club newspaper at Chelsea, editor of the club newspaper, and gave up all the other clubs because I couldn't go on.
But what
Honestly,
year did you? What did you start doing the
86.
on?
Club Core was 86.
No, but the
90
on-field, the on-field.
Oh,
work.
92. We played Manchester United. I was in the old Ivy Clad building, the office, getting some tapes for Club Core. And Colin Hutchinson, the managing director, came out of his office and said, bloody hell, we've got 5 presentations to make at half time. We can't have that done from the PA box up in the stand. We need someone on the pitch to organise it. Who's got the biggest voice here? Barnett, he said. And that was it. I got it. And I said, I'm not going out on the pitch if I can't take someone with me, because they'll just call me a wanker. Which they did anyway, as you well know. But he said, you're in charge. So Paul Elliott had his career-ending injury, so I took him out on the pitch. And the night before, the club newspaper that I was now editing, I introduced a kids page in it, which it had never had before. And the person who did the kids page was very, very good. She was brilliant. And she used to have a column of jokes, kids' jokes in there. God knows where she got them all from. And I sat there the night before going through all the copies that I'd edited, looking at all these jokes, and I picked one out. And I went out on the pitch, and I said to Paul Elliott, stay in the centre circle. I'm going up to the Man U fans. And it was still terracing in those days. So there were 7,000 Man U fans in the North Terrace. And I said, I've got a question for the Manchester United fans. And I walked up to the penalty area. And when I said that, the whole ground went silent. And I thought, I can boss this. I thought, I'm all right here. I can boss this. You just got to control the crowd. And I got to the penalty area and I said, why is Alex Ferguson planting potatoes in the goalmouth at Old Trafford? And you could hear a pin drop. I was really, really nervous, even though I was on top of it because of the punchline coming up. And of course, they hadn't won the league since 67 at that point, 1967. And in the silence, I said, so he'll have something to pick up at the end of the season. Just a good kids joke. And 7,000 United fans went, oi! And went into who the fucking hell is he? And the Chelsea fans all went into who the fuck are Man United or whatever. And I walked back to the centre circle, and Paul Elliott said to me, Jesus, Smile, he said, you got some bottle? I said, no. I said, it would have taken bottle not to do it. They know who I am now. And that was it. I was up and running. And, stadium broadcasting is not the same thing for every outlet. If you talk on television, and if people are listening to this, they'll just have to imagine what I'm doing. If you talk on television, if I put my hands over the sides of my face, you're talking into a camera and you're talking to one person in their front room. There might be 4 or 5 there, but you're talking to each of them one-to-one on television. If you're in a theatre and I'm looking one way and pointing the other, when you're looking to your right, you've got to hit everyone on the left. And it's a different kind of delivery. And when you're looking on the left, you've got to hit everyone to the right. It's a different kind of communication. When you're in a stadium, you have to hit the back row. You have to hit the back row, which is why Status Quo, however much I didn't like them, were a really good stadium act. And someone like David Bowie was a much better act in a theatre where he didn't have to hit the back row in the same way. Now, what you get now in Stadia...
Are you putting yourself alongside them 2 acts?
What you got to do now, what you get now in the Stadia is you get interviews. I always refuse to do interviews. I can't hold a conversation with 40,000 people. I have to hit the back row. It's one-liners. It's half statements. That's why Nelson Mandela could hit the back row. He had huge pauses in the middle of each sentence so that people could take it in. Now they have conversations. It balls the pants off me half-time and pre-match at most games because it's about entertaining the customers rather than liberating the supporters.
So what you're saying is a lot more goes into it than what people think. People think you just go out there. You seem like you've got it off to a fine art.
Well, I did it for long enough. That's why. But it's just about in 1994 when Chelsea hadn't been to a cup final since you played against Stoke in 1972. We played Wolves in the sixth round of the FA Cup. And in 1990, we played Sheffield Wednesday in the semi-final of the League Cup. And we lost 2-0 at home. And the atmosphere was just awful. It was awful. It was terrible. It was nervous and it was appalling. And Colin Hutchinson said to me before the Wolves game, get out there at 20-3 and make sure the crowd's not nervous. So I got out there at 20-3 and it was bedlam. It was brilliant. It was absolutely brilliant. And Wolves weren't a good team. They were probably not even in the top flight. I've got a feeling they're in what was then, the second tier in 94. First division in 1994, I think. But what's now the Championship. But they may have been in the top flight. I don't remember. But I went out there and it was bedlam. And it wasn't the lack of confidence that there was in 1990. It was Glenn Hoddle's team, and it was bedlam. So I stood there for 15 minutes. I never said a word. What was the point? The supporters didn't need me to say anything and interrupt them. Everyone was singing, and it was still terracing, the last season of terracing, and it was bedlam. It was brilliant. So it's and now as well, when the teams come out, when you go to the game. When the teams come out, the pitch host, and this is true of every stadium in the Premier League, club in the Premier League, the pitch host gives the teams out when the teams come out. You don't want that. You don't want a relationship between the pitch host and the supporters when the teams come out. You want a relationship between the supporters and the players. You want them already supporting them. When you came out at Chelsea, it was always the same. Warmed up at the shed end. Peter Barnett ran to the shed and had his name chanted. Ozzy went with him and warmed him up. Ozzy had his name chanted. There was a wave, and then it went round the rest of the team. And by the time he kicked,
they never chanted my name.
That's because you were a hippie and they were all skinheads.
Well, I think it's because I knew most of them behind the goal. They were all from around here. But
don't be daft. They did chant your name.
No, very rarely. But I didn't go out for that. It was nothing.
But they did chant your name.
Well, I had to move on to get appreciated a lot more. But going back, I don't understand you started to say before we come on the show the change. Why would they want to change you with all this experience and everything else? And
they wanted more control over what happened on the pitch. They wanted big screens to dominate, and they used to give me great tomes to read, announcements to make, and I refused to do it. And I'd say, just give me the gist, and I'll get it across. But you can't read long paragraphs which are badly written anyway. I used to say to them, I'm no good at doing Shakespeare. What makes you think I'd be good at doing you? When they gave me these long things to read, they couldn't write. Also, you don't want to stutter over long sentences in a stadium. No one will listen. You just want to hit the back row. Early on, we used to have to do these awful prize draws at half time. It was part of the fundraising for the club, but fair enough. So I had to do it. And someone won a holiday in Florida, in Disneyland, in Orlando, whatever, for a honeymoon. and they came out and collected it. I had an ex-player there to give them a token, or an injured player to give them the token for this was at half time, I think, for the holiday. And so that's it, entered the draw, winner. You could do the same. And I just turned around and I said, great prize that. Disneyland for a honeymoon. Lots of rides. One-line jokes. And
well, our 1970 team would have liked that when you said lots of rides.
Yeah, you all presented it,
especially in Europe. But I remember one of the funniest things. I think the funniest thing ever going on the field at half time. I was upstairs in a bar with Suggs.
Yeah.
And Suggs he must have been out for about 3 days. He was so drunk. He was unbelievable. But in control, great, And one of the girls come up and they said, I don't know what they called him. I don't know. They didn't call him Suggs or whatever. They called him something. They said, excuse me, could you come onto the field at half time and present such and such? And he went, only if I could take him with me. So I'm staying there and I went, yeah, let's go, mate. Come on, let's go. So they were playing Middlesbrough and Chelsea were 4-0 up. You might remember the game. So I forget what year. They were 4-0 up and I've walked down with him and he's rotten. He's rotten. I mean, I've had a couple of drinks, but he's... So we walked through the tunnel, the old tunnel, and as he walked on the field, all the Middlesbrough supporters were on the left-hand side of the tunnel, Yeah. And an almighty stick they give him, and Chelsea were 4-0 up, which, and he just turned around and I'm laughing at him, and they were slaughtering Suggs, and he went like that, 4-0, and then all of a sudden he went like that, put his hand in his thing, and he had the golden goal ticket, and he had won the golden goal. The first goal. And he went and stuck it on his thing, and he went at the golden goal. He said, I got one of the goals. It was rotten. And the more they abused him, the more we laughed at him. It was so funny. Anyway, he still goes, don't he? He still...
Yeah. Big Chelsea fan. I as you know, I walk people around the pitch at half time. It's just a way of saying to the supporters, hello, how are you? Thanks for your support. And so there was no talk, just lots of communication. And we were playing Arsenal, and I walked Webby round, Dave Webb, who of course got the FA Cup final winner in 1970. And we got round the third stand, where the Arsenal supporters were. And they were chanting, the fucking Elliot Webby. And Webby stood there and he conducted them with a big smile on his face. And everyone was going crazy. The rest of the Chelsea supporters were all chanting his name. And it was absolutely brilliant. So about 2 years later, we're playing Arsenal. And I'm taking John Dempsey, who was his central defensive partner around. Late John Dempsey died in December. Tragic, 78. Lovely man. And I was taking John Dempsey round, and I told him before we went that Webby had conducted them when they sang that to him. So John gets there, and Webby did it in a very kind of controlled baton way, with small strokes. John Dempsey got there, and he did it with big, picturesque strokes. And he did it for about 3 or 4 gestures, and then with the last one, he shot up his right hand with 2 fingers and gave them a big V sign. Boy, did I get into trouble for that. Did I get into huge trouble for that? These are the reasons why I got sacked, maybe, because in the end, but it was just so funny. And everybody loved John Dempsey for doing that. And,
everybody loved John Dempsey anyway. It was, it was one of the saddest. We've had him on here, and it's so sad. I spoke to his wife. I couldn't make the funeral. I spoke to his wife, and I was on to her for about an hour, and she was telling me some of, what it was like to live with him and everything else. I said, well, I know all that. We had to live with him, you know. And it's the lovely thing about it. I mean, when we used to go on tour, we all used to talk about experiences. What was a funny experience? And he told a story one day. He played for Ireland in Denmark, and the pitch was tight, and you could actually touch the fans and this and that. He said, "No, I'm fighting with their centre forward now, as he did, you know, one below, one up, and all this." And I started to. There's a corner, and before he took the corner, he said, "As I'm shaping up with their centre forward," said, "someone's hit me over the head from the back." And it was a little old lady with an umbrella. She had sneaked on the field because she couldn't stand him no more. She hit him over the head with an umbrella. He's gone. But that's the kind of lad he was, you know. Everything he done was, you know, putting Harry Miller's coat on in the treatment room. And yeah, great loss. Great loss to us. He was so sad. But
Yeah.
There must have been a lot of amusing moments when you took players and such like out onto the pitch, Neil. But there were also must have been some poignant moments. I particularly recall the Matthew Harding day when we played Spurs shortly after poor Matthew had died. That I mean, you must have been right in the middle of it that day.
Yeah. That was. It was. Matthew invited me on the helicopter before he left Bolton to go back with him that night. But I was driving, so it was. I think one of the things that I really dislike now, as well, I sound like a grumpy old man, which is really unfair to old men because I was a grumpy young man. But one of the things that I really dislike now is the club. The one thing the club has kept on from the Abramovich era is no to hate, that no to hate campaign. Yet when the teams run out, they play the Liquidator and everyone chants, "We hate Tottenham." And I just, one of the things that's really wrong with contemporary society is that people think that how much you hate someone is a measure of how much you love someone else. That is so warped and pathetic. And that is one of the things that's really wrong with football.
It turns me off. That part of it turns me off. I was in the Aussie Suite the other week, exactly what you're talking about, and the fella who runs the table that I'm on, and his daughter, she says, "I'm going out quarter an hour before the kickoff." I said, "Well, the game, you know, our seat's just there. We walk out as they're kicking off." "Oh, I want to listen to that. I want to listen to the, you know," and she stood there and saying, you know, and she got so much joy about that. And I just turned me off.
Yeah.
And I think, how can grown people, you know, especially in the world we live in, this world at the moment, we're not living in a we're not in a good place by it. All the people in this country. And you shouldn't mention in football matches, hate shouldn't come into a song or anything like that. I think it's just absolute. And you'd think they'd know better. You think the club would know better. You know.
If I was still running the pitch, the Liquidator would have come off a long time ago and been replaced by something else, which is what they've done in the Midlands. You know, the East Midlands, the West Midlands Police made Wolves and Aston Villa change their pre-match because the Wolves one was the Liquidator and they just went fuck off West Brom. And they now play. High.
Well, that's not so bad. That's not so bad. But hate is a terrible word, but fuck off is all right. That's all right. Go on, go. Yeah.
Anyway, go back to Matthew Harding, the home game after he died in the helicopter crash in 1996 was against Tottenham, and there was just this concern about how the Tottenham supporters would act and how the Chelsea supporters would act with Tottenham there. And it was perfection. It was absolute perfection. 10 years later, 2006, Tottenham were the away team, the visitors after Ozzy died.
Yeah.
And we had exactly the same scenario, and Tottenham were brilliant again. And the following season, which would have been the 2006-07 season, when Tottenham came to us, I went out on the pitch before the game and said, I just want to thank the Tottenham supporters for the way they conducted themselves, not just last year with the loss of Peter Osgood, but 10 years ago with the loss of Matthew Hardy. And the whole ground broke into applause.
Yeah.
Loads of Chelsea supporters broke into applause because everybody appreciated it.
Yeah.
And I think we played at Tottenham in the FA Cup semi-final at Wembley after Ugo Egiog had died, who was their reserve team coach. He was never a Tottenham player, but he was their reserve team coach. And that got the same respect from Chelsea supporters as those two occasions did from Tottenham supporters. So it can be done, but it's not done to acknowledge it. And when I did acknowledge it, it was done to acknowledge it. Everybody wanted to express their gratitude. So when I look back to those occasions now, I just think how brilliant the supporters were, and how if certain things were handled differently, things would be more brilliant than they tend to be. I know everybody loves to hate, and it's all funny. The Williams song is brilliant. I haven't got a problem with that because it's funny. You know, the Sheikh from Spurs, they paid his flight, but Willian, he saw the light, he got the call from Abramovich, and off he went to Stamford Bridge. He ate Tottenham. That's funny, but a lot of it is just sick.
I agree. I don't like it. It's whether I supported a team or not, I wouldn't like. I go up to Stoke sometimes. I don't agree with things they do. It's football should be what it is. It's a beautiful game. It should be played that way. That's why we're talking about people like Griezmann and young Cole, who someone's got to get him to, because he's lost something. Nobody knows what it is. It's almost as if he needs to see a psychiatrist because the kid, and that's not just my feeling. I've spoke to people and we've all got different opinions about it. But I do know something. When I went through a spell at Chelsea, when he reminded me of me, but mine was for a bad injury, and I was having a terrible time, torrid time, and he just find it hard to smile. And when you find it hard to smile, you're not enjoying the game. It's like the thing with George Bestie when he's going to take a corner, threw the beer bottle at him, and he picked it up and he went, "No good to me, it's empty." You've got to keep that humour in the game.
Well, I want to ask you about something else. See, the old journo's coming out in me. I can't stop it. I want to ask you about something. In 1983, you rejoined Chelsea. You didn't play for us, but in pre-season you did. And in the first pre-season game you played, Eddie Niedzwiecki, who had just joined the club, who became a Welsh international goalkeeper while he was at Chelsea, was in goal. And he had the most wonderful strike of the ball. He could boot the ball and it would land on Kerry Dixon's or Dave Beattie's head, and the team was on its way. And he picked the ball up, bounced it, looked up, and Alan Hudson turned up next to him and said, "Drop it, let's play from here." And he was completely and utterly bewildered that anyone should do that. Because in his entire football life, he was only 24 or something then, but in his entire football life, the goalkeeper picked it up and hoofed it. And he couldn't believe that playing from the back, as it's now called, it wasn't then, was something that you did. And he dropped it and you started playing and went from there. Now everybody does it.
Well, I don't, to a certain extent, there's a difference between me going back and getting it off the goalkeeper than a centre half getting it off the goalkeeper. I
He's
did
mad.
this, you are going back to Griezmann, Palmer to a certain extent. The kid's still got a lot to learn about the game. We probably see the best of him last year. Hopefully, he can get back to that and improve his game rather than,
I think Cole Palmer is a front third of the pitch player. I think his position.
Well, this is what I'm trying to say about the perfection. What we do is, I'm one of those. You always look for perfection. Yeah, there's no such thing as you can't learn. And sometimes you're going to be in parts of the field, and I see people get the ball and think they can play in the bottom left-hand corner. I see it with this kid. I'll give you an example. There's this kid played for Tottenham now. He was at Forest. He's got so much talent.
Brennan Johnson.
No. The left, the big.
Oh, Jed Spence.
Yes. Spence. Well, when he played for Forest, I thought this kid, why isn't one of the top clubs got him in? He kept getting it and going forward, running past people, playing 1-2s, getting in. And me and my son Alan would say, "Oh, this kid can play. We'll bet Forest today because this kid's going to cause them trouble." Then all of a sudden he goes out of the game a little bit. But he had an injury. Now he's at Spurs, and all he does is pass it back. And this kid's, I'm thinking, what's gone wrong with this kid, And that is how the game gets you with these coaches, with exactly what you're saying, crowding Cole Palmer out. They're Chelsea players are nicking his space. It's a little bit like with me and John Hollins. I didn't want John Hollins to be 10 yards away from me. I want him to go somewhere else. Because I wanted to go. Me and Charlie, give it to him and he can go and do what he wants, or little 1-2s and that. In certain parts of the field, you're not needed. And that's why I bring the Griezmann thing up, because wherever the ball went to him, you knew you was safe. Nowadays, you got these people trying to play football at the back. And look at this playing back to the goalkeeper. And the goalkeeper, there was 5 passes the other night where it went the goalkeeper. It went 1, 2, 3 back to the goalkeeper, and then the goalkeeper kicked it for a throw in. And you think, well, why didn't the first man kick it for a throw in? Because it would have saved us all the problem of. And this is all through. I blame Guardiola for it. I think introducing this thing with the goalkeeper is total bollocks. As you said, Alisson the other night. That's what goalkeeping's all about. He was fantastic, wasn't he? Only Schmeichel could have done that in the modern era. Peter Cech maybe, but Frank Lampard said in a thing the other night. I see him doing an old interview with Harry, his uncle Harry, and he said about Harry got the sack when Chelsea won the Champions League because they come 5th, therefore they couldn't go in the Champions League, and he had a laugh. And Frank said, "Yeah, well, we shouldn't have won it. We shouldn't have won it." He said, "Peter Cech won us it." And that's exactly what happened the other night. Alisson, they talk about goal scorers, but 29 shots, incredible. But you didn't see him get the ball and start passing it about. As soon as he got it, he was up there, wasn't he? Let's get it in their half, And I think Guardiola has totally ruined our game in that aspect.
He hasn't. It's everyone trying to copy him badly who has.
Well, they're more for them. I don't think Ferguson would have copied him. Clough wouldn't have copied him. Waddington wouldn't have followed him. Or Nicholson or Phil Shankly would have went to Keegan, fucking go on, you go and get it, but we ain't going to do that because Clemens kicked it as far as anyone.
Yeah, but the thing is as well, if you're going to play out from the back, you don't play it to the least ball proficient players in the team. You play it into your midfield players. So your midfield players surely have got to start moving a bit like forwards move in order to make space and take the ball on the move and receive it. But I see the ball go down for a set play or a goal kick or an offside or a free kick or whatever, and everyone's standing still. There's no one on the move. That's not football. And I just think as people punts around at the back for minute after minute, getting nowhere, it's not the game that young kids are going to fall in love with.
Well, they're going to pick all the bad habits up. That's the only problem. It's not the way to play the game. I've always said, I remember when Dave Sexton said to me about, why do you keep passing to Ozzy, you know? Not get it out to Nobby, because he went to the World Cup. Brazil won the World Cup with the two wingers. He bought Keith Weller. That's why he bought Keith Weller in, you know, that following season. And Weller was great. Why they sold him, I don't know. And he said to me about get it out wide, you know. I said, the game's all about giving it to your best players. We got more chance of scoring if Osgood's got the ball. You know, the game is all about the more your best players have the ball, the more chance you have of winning. Exactly what you just said. Basically, the defenders ain't going to win you the game. The only way they win you the game is by stopping the opposition.
Al, talking about the Cole Palmer situation, how would you handle it if you were playing in that sort of similar scenario right now? The fact that your own teammates are crowding you out.
Well,
you come deeper, which is what he does the whole time. And
it's. I think the problem is that I wouldn't say it's a language barrier, or they got two players in midfield, two so alike. You know, the fella from Brighton and the Argentinian. You know, although he gets a lot more forward now and he's getting a couple of goals, but they seem to. It's almost as if he got so much good publicity and exposure last year, Palmer, that these other players would think, fucking hell, you know. I remember when Nick Hancock come on the show, and one of the directors said, we're becoming a one-man team. And that was almost like Chelsea last year. They would, you know, it was all about fucking if Palmer gets the ball, we'll win tonight. But he just lost that edge. And I think part of this problem with him is it might be that the others thinking, we're not giving it to you because, you know.
Well, I think another problem, to be fair, is he reached the final of a European international competition. And I think he's probably flipping knackered. And I think
he don't run about enough to be knackered, Neil. He doesn't run about. He walks about. You know, you see your Maradona. You see, you know, these players don't get knackered. He's, you know, last year we got the 4 goals in one game, and he was still not sweating. You know, I bet Kit don't even need washing. You know, this kid. My mate goes mad. Johnny Westwood over in the East End, Chelsea is a day's long. He goes mad about him. He says, why don't, when he loses the ball, chase after? I said, because he's not supposed to do that. You know, we got 10 others to do that. You know, the thing we were talking yesterday about, the thing with Gallagher, you know, the other night when he chased the 2 fellas, it was like watching Police 5, you know, fella chasing someone up, he's nicked his wallet or something, you know, but that's what they want. That's his game, Gallagher.
Right, I've got a challenge for you. So now everybody plays out from the back, even the worst sides, which is so stupid because it leaves them with no edge. Everyone plays out from the back. So give me, in your whole career, your whole football life, the best technically gifted on the ball defenders.
The most gifted defender, Marvin Hinton at Chelsea.
Yeah. Bobby Moore?
Bobby Moore to a certain extent. At international level, yes, because he had more space and he was more in control than anyone else. He was. I think there's international players and club players. And Bobby, I've seen him play with West Ham, and he, you know, I remember. I'll go back to that in a second, but I remember saying to Frank Lampard one day, was having over his pub, I think, and I said, how comes for a left back you got such a great right foot?
This is Frank Lampard Senior.
Frank Lampard Senior at West Ham, and he went, well, it's when Bobby used to, when he didn't want to edit, he would duck. He said, no, I used to volley it away with my right foot. He said, so I had so much practice in this. And then we laughed, you know. And that was, Bobby said to me, you know,
That's when Bobby Moore had a hangover when he didn't want to head it because he liked to.
Bobby, there's, you know, we could go do 10 shows in one day about Bobby Moore. I mean, that's how my love for him is immense. But yeah, Lou Hinton, Peter Simpson at Arsenal.
Yeah.
These players, you know, they were so alike, Peter Simpson and Marvin Hinton. They didn't believe in themselves, but they were so naturally gifted defenders. People used to say Marvin was too short for a centre half and whatever. Dave, I remember Dave tried to play him in midfield, and because he was that skillful, but he didn't have the pace. He couldn't get up and down. But he was without a doubt. I don't think at Arsenal we had very gifted defenders. Pat Rice was all action. Sammy Nelson was all action. I think even in the double team, you know, Peter Simpson was the one that could put the ball anywhere, but he wasn't encouraged to do that. Don Howe wouldn't encourage that. Don Howe wouldn't encourage this. Get it up there, get it out the wing, get it into, you know, wherever. But don't be knocking it about in them areas. They're dangerous, you know. That's why he was the best coach. He was the most, you know, I don't like coaches, but he was just common sense. That's all it was. To answer your question, them two.
What about currently?
Currently, I honestly think, as a kid, when I went on tour with Chelsea and everything else, I always knew that the other countries were definitely more technically better than us. I'm not surprised that these coloured countries and coloured players have come in and taken over. Not at all, because I see it as a kid. We have to work a lot harder at our game. We're talking about Charlie Cook. You get the odd one come in and they can do that, you know. But these foreigners are better technically than us, and we have to work harder. I had to work hard at my game to keep up to that level. You know, at Stoke, I went to another level because basically the manager gave me the right what Palmer's got. Do what you want. Just enjoy yourself. Go and play like you did at school, you know, that kind of thing. And that's what Palmer does, you know. Give him the ball. Wouldn't matter if there's 1 million people in the ground. That kid would play that way. He only knows one way to play. But I think exactly what you're saying is he's getting smothered by players. And I see him the other night as well when he was having a bad time. He likes the one where he drops his shoulder, and it gives him the Neto, and he likes it with the other kid with the coloured kid with the thing around his head. He likes to go one way and then sling it out to the winger to give him a lot of space, and then he goes to join him. And that's when he has his little bit of fun on that little side at that right hand side, inside right pocket, just outside their box. That's when he's at his most dangerous, because he's got a sweet left foot and he picks them out, doesn't he? And he did the same thing when he got the goals against Everton, when he mugged the centre half off. He stuck it through his legs and went past two others as if they weren't standing there, you know, get out my way kind of thing, you know. And that is why, if you can't see that as a coach, you've got to say to them players, when he's got it, get out of the way.
Yeah.
You know, it's like when Hazard Hazard was an unbelievable player. When he got it going forward, you didn't get near him. You just stood back and watched, basically. You know, and that's why Ozzy and Hutch were so unique, because Hutch was quite the opposite of him, and he would be amazed, you know. And Hutch knew that his job was to hit the other centre half as hard as he could and make way for Oz, you know. And that was the understanding. But in this team, I don't think they've got an understanding.
No.
These players truly believe their transfer fee. I think they believe the cars they drive in. I think they think they're better players than what they are. when they can't do, half of them can't do the simple thing. Really, they can do the trick, but they can't do the Palmer does the simple thing perfectly. Them that ball we put inside the fullback last year when everyone went mad. Well, that was how good he is.
Yeah.
Nobody else can do that. Nobody on that field could do that. Not only did they wouldn't even have seen it, let alone execute it. But that's how good the kid is. So you let the kid alone.
That was against Newcastle. He was deep there. It was in midway in his own half, but
yeah. And he just turned, and I bet nobody picked it out. Nobody, and I went, oh my God! And that's when you ask yourself, could you have done that? Well, I could do something like that, but
you could have done it on your right foot. You couldn't have done it like him on your left foot.
I was just about to say, get me the same, Neil. Well, listen, we could talk all day. Oh, he's gone. He's disappeared. Last question for you, Neil, and thanks very much for taking the time out to discuss all things Chelsea. It's been intriguing and fascinating. Just looking back at your 32 years at the Bridge, what would you pick out as your highlight? Have you got a highlight? Can you pick out?
Definitely. May the 19th, 2012, Champions League. It changed my whole attitude, actually, to supporting the team. Up until then, I wanted Chelsea to win, come what may. Since then, I want to be entertained, because to me, that was winning it all. And I remember going to the 2008 Champions League final against Man U, which, by the way, was for 120 minutes to the penalty shootout, was one of the most high-quality games of football I've ever seen. But Chelsea tend not to think about that now because we lost the penalty shootout. But the Munich game, one of the things that I was expecting to be disgusted by was all the UEFA claptrap building up to kickoff. But in fact, it was brilliant. It was absolutely sensational. The atmosphere was incredible. And then you had the game, and it was just it was a game of just the highest tension. And of course, Muller gave Munich the lead in the 83rd minute, and the manager subbed him immediately and put a centre back on. I adored Huddy's team. I adored that late 1960s, early 1970s team, and up until Abramovich come into the club, Mourinho come into the club, really. My greatest 11, Ozzy would have been centre forward, and Hutch might well have been there as well. But Didier Drogba was Ozzy and Hutch. He was unbelievable. He was actually the two. He was the strength and the power of Hutch. He didn't have the grace of Ozzy, because Ozzy had huge grace as well as all his skills. But Didier had the skills. He just didn't.
Well, I think the one thing Osgood, we had more than one thing over him. He was so much more consistent. But the game had changed. But the one thing you've got to say about Drogba, they were talking about the other night, talking about big games. You know, like the Liverpool game, the PSG, and it's when big players stand up, and he had that ability. He was a big match player, wasn't he? There's no doubt about it.
They were big match players,
and so was Oz. Oz got in all the finals.
No, he was absolutely.
But I bet he couldn't drink like Ozzy the day before and then go and do it.
No, I bet he couldn't. But I bet he never. I always say the biggest difference between Didier and Ozzy was Ozzy would fall down in the centre circle because he was still pissed. Didier would fall down at the edge of the penalty area because he thought somebody had touched him.
Yeah, well, I got that one as well.
Hey,
I used to go.
Just before we leave this, Tony, I've just got to ask one more question. How many times were you collected from the pub that's now the Butcher's Hook across the Fulham Road from the main entrance to Stamford Bridge? How many times were you collected there a couple of hours before the game and taken to the dressing room in order to prepare and sober up?
That's this is. Do you know something? This is God's. This is the truth. I never drank on a Friday night home matches. I did it about. I can count on one hand. I was having a bad time at the time, and I was drinking for all the wrong reasons, and I did that. But I never drank when I went to Stoke, Arsenal. I never drank the night before at home matches. But I played at Manchester City away for Chelsea in 1970 or whatever, and the lads went down the pub, and I didn't get it. I thought they actually drink the night before a game. When I went to Stoke, we played every time we went to London at the Russell Hotel. They had a back door that led to the pub round the back. And people I didn't know drank used to sneak into the pub to have 2 or 3 pints. The Brian Clough thing, I think it was. Tony would say, well, "Don't go too mad," but yeah, he'd let you have a glass of wine with dinner and all that kind of stuff. But no, it was. That's a bit of that was a bad question. It was a good question, but it's a myth that I was. I think probably a lot of the problem was we used to go to Wimbledon Dogs on a Friday night as well. And I remember one particular time, but sometimes, when the crowd, you got a corner and I took one and someone shouted out the name of a dog as I was taking it from the night before, see your dog got beat last night, Hudson, but they're great,
Maybe I should jog your memory a bit here, Al. What about the Stevie Kember game? Was that at the Bridge or was that at Selhurst Park?
Well, funnily enough, that was a Saturday afternoon. I've been out for about 2 days. But this is when I was having a bad time. I was having a bad time at home, brought the injury, everything. I was having a bad time, and I never give it and we went down to Brighton the day before. Me, Danny Gillan, who ended up with Phil Collins, Tony Frew, my Uncle George, and we come back, and that was a Friday. We played Palace on the Saturday. And I got in the dressing room and I was all over the place. And I looked at me watch. I thought, I've got time for a quick one. So I walked back out the ground, walked into the Adelaide, which was next to the Imperial. And I walked in and my uncle said to me, "You're not playing?" I said, "Yeah, George, get me a quick pint." I said, "I need a pint." I said, "Because I can't play like this. I'm all over the place." I got halfway through the pint and went back and played. And it was, I remember watching a film about Australian football, and this geezer was on drugs, and all he could see was the world spinning round, every time the ball came. And that's what I was like. And I made, Stevie Kember's a great friend of mine. I love Stevie, but I made him look like a white Maradona. I was that bad. And when we done a show over Gatwick one night, I invited Stevie. He never came, and because I told the story about. I think that's why Dave signed him, because he was so outstanding against me that day. And I was walking through the changing room one day, and Dave pulled me aside, and he said to me, "It's got nothing to do with your position at the club." He said, "But I'm signing Steve Kember." I said, "Yeah, good player. I think it's a good addition." He said, "It won't affect you," but I did know it would affect me because he wanted me to play on the right and all that. So slowly, that's how it developed. And I think it was the time when Chelsea need, the me and Osgood thing, and get me out of the way a bit and bring Stevie in. But it was never a threat, and it was never anything, because that just didn't make sense. It's like overcrowding your midfield, Yeah. I could understand in buying Steve Kember to do the Johnny Ollins role.
Yeah.
But not my role. It's like trying to replace Charlie Cook. He was irreplaceable. And the old one that joined us in 1967, 68, he was on par with George Best. Now, when George Best was at his very best with Manchester United, Charlie Cook is the only player I've ever seen that was at that level. It was incredible, mate. He couldn't get near him. The rollover, he did the rollover. We never heard. We said, "What's he trying to do here?" He's rolling, and he did it with Emlyn Hughes one night. And Emlyn Hughes went down on one arm, and 1-0, and the whole crowd went with him. And I was sitting in the North Stand. I went, whoa, you know, and that's what he could do, you know. But
And
then he met.
he'd go back and do it again just for fun.
Yeah, absolutely. But it was great. I mean, that was why you pay. It was worth paying entrance fee. But then the dreaded happened, didn't he? He met Sponge, and that was it.
Tommy Baldwin.
Okay, listen, we could talk all day about those times.
I've got to watch a game in Thailand anyway.
Okay. Any final message you got for Neil to wrap it up?
Yeah, but the most important message, it ain't the same. I go to the bridge, it ain't the same. And, you know, we've had our disagreements with you and not really, but it ain't the same. And I don't like to see, I mean, you just proved how your love for Chelsea is, you know, like Tony, like most Chelsea boys. And you don't, this new thing at Chelsea, you don't get rid of people like you. You don't do it. You know, and you know, it's like breaking a family up. You don't do it. You know, you keep the people there. And I never met anybody that's had a bad word for you. I could understand it got rid of, there was something wrong within the players as well. Everybody, you know, I think that's a great thing, and there's a great rapport there. You know, and that's gone. You know, and all I got, you know, what you said about me earlier, I appreciate. And it's just great to see you. And I'm glad you're well.
Thank you
through all these bad times.
I always draw on, when I was doing the live TV, I had this, in the early 2000s, I had this black community police officer who was a Chelsea supporter on, and I didn't know him. I'd been given his name and got him on to talk basically about race relations and policing and everything. And I said to him, he was quite late in arriving, so we went straight in the studio. So I hadn't had a chance to talk to him. And it was live, and I said to him, when did you first become a Chelsea supporter? And he said, my first game was in 1982. And I said, whoa, hang on. I said, that's when Paul Cannaville made his debut, 1982, and racism was at the worst level ever within the club then. What made you stay? And he said something that is just the most brilliant thing about football I've ever heard. He said, I had two choices. Either I could say, I'm not putting up with this and left, or I could say, I have every bit as much right for this club to be my club as you have for it to be your club, and you're not taking my club away from me.
I believe, yeah.
And I said, that's brilliant. So when all through my time of working at the club, all through those 32 years, the most important time without fail was watching the game. It wasn't my output, it was watching the game. That's all that was ever of most importance to me.
But I think the most important thing about you say that, and and you're talking from the heart, but it was obviously a thrill to do it all beforehand and be close to them players. You know.
It was. But for me, the absolute highlight of it all was actually following the game, watching the game. And nobody can take that away from me, and they never will.
Yeah, absolutely. Great finish.